fiscal strategy paper. The Senate on Tuesday, 6th October 2018, considered the request of Mr. President and referred same to the Committee on Finance for further legislative action. This was pursuant to Section 11(3) of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which says the federal government shall prepare the medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper, which entails a 3-year planning tool defining the federal government's economic, social, and developmental objectives and priorities. The MTEF and FSP is a veritable and important economic tool and draft plan that clearly outlines government-intended strategy for a period of 3 years in achieving key objectives and priorities of government, which are economic, social, infrastructure, and development. MTEF FSP also focuses on a microeconomic model that indicates estimates of revenues and expenditure, fiscal targets, risks, as well as government financial obligations, while also highlighting key parameters in fiscal and monetary policies. In general, the MTEF and FSP ensure the prudent management of financial resources and aid in the establishment of credible basis for allocating resources to fundamental and strategic projects and priorities, while emphasizing and encouraging fiscal discipline and paving a clear path for the implementation of government budgets. On page 3, you have membership. On page 4 of the report, we have the methodology. On page 5, 5.0 is a review of the 2018 budget. Page 7 is the expenditure on the 2018 budget. So if we go to page 8, 6.0, 2019-2021 medium-term expenditure framework. The medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper of the year 2019-2021 is designed in line with the goals of the Economic and Recovery and Growth Plan, ERGP, 2017 to 2020, and consolidates on the efforts of the previous MTEFs and FSPs in achieving the overall objective of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. The MTEF and the FSP 2019-2021 is predicated and focuses on 3 cardinal pillars of sustaining and enhancing economic growth, building a globally competitive economy, and increasing social inclusion by investing in people. On 6.1 is the fiscal strategy for 2019-2021, which will leverage on the continuous alignment and implementation of the fiscal, monetary, and trade policies in a very coordinated manner that will aid in the realization and actualization of the 2019-2021 fiscal strategy objectives, which are enhancing economic growth and ensuring inclusiveness, promoting economic diversification, maintaining macroeconomic stability, increasing revenue generation, rebalancing the distribution of government spending, improving quality of spending, and ensuring sustainable deficit levels. 6.2 is a summary of the 2019 FGN revenue and expenditure framework. Daily crude oil production, 2.3 million barrels per day. Benchmark oil price, $60 per barrel. Exchange rate, 305 to $1. GDP growth rate, 3.0%. Inflation growth rate, 9.98%. The total federal collectible revenue, 14.89 trillion. Net oil and gas revenue after cost, deductions, and derivations, 7.6 trillion. Net non-oil revenue after cost and deductions, 2.3 trillion. FGN retained revenue, 7.9 trillion. Total FGN proposed expenditure, 8.83 trillion. Fiscal deficit, 1.86 trillion. New borrowings, 1.65 trillion. Statutory transfers, 492.4 billion. Debt service, 2.14 trillion. Sinking fund, 120 billion. Pension, gratuities, and retirees' benefits, 504.3 billion. Total FGN expenditure, 10.3 trillion. Total recurrent non-debt, 4.72 trillion. Personnel cost, 2.29 trillion. Capital expenditure, exclusive of transfers, 2.86 trillion. Special intervention recurrent, 350 billion. Special intervention capital, 150 billion. Committee recommendations on key assumptions. 7.1, crude oil production. It's a well-known fact that oil production remains the major contributing factor to economic fortune of Nigeria since its discovery. It accounts for over 50% of total federally collected federal government revenue and over 90% of foreign exchange earnings. The production of crude oil has been faced with a number of challenging factors that hamper the realization of the daily expected outcome of the commodity for more than a decade, particularly due to the activities of Niger Delta militants. However, there was production output of 2.0 million barrels by December 2018 due to continuous effort of government in producing oil facilities. Committee recommendation. The committee recommends the adoption of 2.3 million barrels as the daily production output of crude oil in 2019. And it is of the view that the target is achievable due to the continuous effort of all stakeholders in checkmating the issues of oil facilities, vandalism, and other vices associated with such regard. 7.2, crude oil price benchmark. Recommendation. The committee recommends the adoption of $60 per barrel of crude as oil benchmark price for the 2019 fiscal year budget. Exchange rate. Recommendation. The committee recommends the adoption of 305 naira to $1 as the official exchange rate of the 2019 fiscal year, and encourages the CBN to continue adopting strategies that will aid in the strengthening of the naira and bridging the gap between the official and parallel market rate of the foreign exchange. Debt management stroke new borrowing. Recommendation. The committee recommends the adoption of 164 trillion as the amount for new borrowing to fund the budget deficit, and advises relevant agencies to continue exploring ways of generating additional revenues for government to bring down the fiscal deficit. Also, the federal government should harness the full optimal potential of the Federal Ministry of Mines and Steel Development in terms of revenue generation to minimize the level of new borrowing. The federal government should consider reducing the granting of waivers and exemptions while ensuring that the Nigerian Customs Service personnel are at all oil terminals for accountability, and the Federal Inland Revenue Service should consider increasing tax on luxury goods and services. 20% operating surplus to be remitted by government-owned enterprises should be deducted at source. Special intervention. Recommendation. The committee recommends that a 500 billion special intervention fund is adopted and enjoins the cooperation of relevant committees in the National Assembly and other relevant NDAs in ensuring that the funds are judiciously utilized to provide a positive, tangible impact of the funds on the Nigerian people. Conclusion. The committee sincerely expresses its appreciation to the Senate leadership and the entire Senate for the opportunity to serve it. Thank you, Mr. President.
I rise to just share a few concerns with my colleagues in the chamber. Mr. President, having looked at this report and the recommendations of our Finance Committee, let me first of all commend the committee for a job well done. But Mr. President, I think it's time we begin to look at our total budget outlook in terms of capital spending, because it's explainable that when we had an increased budget deficit consistently in the last three years, it could have been explained that we're trying to spend to come out of a recession. But the President is, by the time you look at the report of the Debt Management Office, where the total borrowing currently stands at about 24 trillion, and having to spend almost 50% of our earnings to service this borrowing. I believe that, based on these reports and the various projections that we have seen over the last couple of months, where we are projected to be growing our GDP by almost about 2% annually, I think it's time for us to now begin to look at how can we now bring down the deficit by either two things, Mr. President. It's either we begin to reduce capital expenditure to focus on completing most of the ongoing programs of government, or by even tinkering, Mr. President. There's nothing wrong in tinkering with the benchmark all benchmark by even $2 or $3, considering the positive nature of oil pricing, in the global market. I think it's time we begin to look at those things with the President, because by the time the budget for 2020 is coming to this Assembly, we'll have another medium-term expenditure framework. So I think as the National Assembly, it is good we look at those areas that will lead to stability. We are already having threats and caution by international monetary funds that we should begin to look at how we should review the current dual exchange rate policy of government, owing to the fact that we spend billions and trillions of naira to stabilize our naira. So these are some of the things very fundamental that we as a National Assembly and as the Senate should begin to look at to assist the executive, because once this is passed, it becomes the law of the land, Mr. President. So that's my only little contributions in that regard. Thank you, Mr. President.
Of the recommendations, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate.